remember that I couldn't get out of bed, and some days I walked a couple of steps and collapsed. So from that to think I'd ever do anything like doing a 20-day trek at high altitude carrying my stuff, I thought was felt impossible, particularly when the doctors tell you that's pretty much the case as well.
So welcome to the first ever Soulfood Sunday. And Soulfood Sundays is going to be really the place to share some of your stories. Over the years at the Optimum Health Clinic, we've done a number of recovery stories in different places. Secrets to Recovery, I think we did over 40 different in-depth audio interviews. And in our Facebook Lives, we've covered a bunch of video interviews. But the thing that I want to do here, I think we will share some of the highlights from some of those sessions. But particularly, I'm interested to focus on some of the moments of breakthrough and insight. So not necessarily whole detailed stories, we may do some of those, but those moments of kind of transformation where we suddenly see things differently, or we feel things differently, or something lands in a new way. Be that a breakthrough on the healing path, be that a change in our relationship with ourselves, change in how we relate to other people. But I want to share what happens in those moments of transformation. As a practitioner, much of the work we're doing is to try to catalyze and support those moments of insight and transformation. And they're magical, they're beautiful, and in a sense, I think we often get a lot from hearing other people's experiences. So if you have something you'd like to share, it doesn't have to be something massive and dramatic. Sometimes the more subtle, sometimes the more impactful it can be. Please do reach out to Jenny at theoptimumhealthclinic.com. Jenny's one of the people helping produce this daily vlog and podcast, and she can arrange a time for us to have 5, 10, 15 minutes on a video call to discuss what's happened for you so we can share it for the community. The first Soulfood Sunday today is with Andy, and Andy's is a bit of a kind of overarching story of him going from being quite severely affected with ME chronic fatigue to trekking in Nepal. It's quite a dramatic change. It's quite a lot that gets covered in a short period of time, but hopefully it's going to be a source of inspiration and support. So here's Andy and Andy's story of trekking in Nepal. So Andy, good to chat. I got the message from Jenny that you did a 20-day trek through Nepal last year. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. 20 days through Nepal in Annapurna trek.
So just say a little bit before we jump back to kind of where you came from. I don't mean in terms of geographical location, but where you came from in terms of your own experience to get to that point. Just say a bit about the kind of trek and what was involved. I think you were carrying all of your own equipment. It sounds like it was a pretty physical experience.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved traveling from very early on. It's one of the things that just really enjoyed, and kind of, for me, one of the purposes of my life is to kind of travel, meet other people, see other things. And Nepal's been on my list for a while. So what effectively it was trekking independently, carrying everything that I needed, going from about 1,000 meters up to 5,500 meters gradually over that time. So adjusting to the altitude as well. Staying with people, which was amazing. So it was with local families the whole time in their spare rooms. So eating with them, getting to know them, and then kind of moving on and trekking during the day. Amazing scenery, which started with kind of quite tropical jungle weather at the base at the start. And seeing that kind of the vegetation, rivers, all of that, going right to the point of snow, mountain at the top. So going from really one extreme to the other, which just was, every day was a different sight and scenery and experience.
And how far was the actual kind of physical distance that you were trekking in that time?
Do you know what? I don't actually know.
A long way, I imagine.
Yeah, it wasn't clearly on the guidebook. I think it probably wasn't as far as some other treks I've done kind of in similar distances, but I think because of the altitude, it was definitely going slower, particularly at the top. I probably didn't actually cover that many miles that last day, but because the altitude was so high, I could feel my heart beating the whole time.
Sure.
But how strenuous it was on my body, both carrying that and at that altitude, was definitely more of the challenge probably than the physical distance of it.
And let's jump back to just say a bit about where you'd come from in terms of your own journey to be able to get to that point. So, what were some of the kind of lowest points on the kind of ME chronic fatigue path for you?
Yeah, there were definitely some very low points. I first got ill 10 years ago. Over the first year, my health gradually declined. So it's probably that kind of 9 years ago now that was my probably lowest point. And at that point, I wasn't able to work. I was kind of quite a few days where I was bedbound, struggled to kind of walk around the flat, couldn't leave the flat at all. So was definitely housebound for a number of months. And then the recovery was a very kind of slow process from that low point.
What were some of the key insights? Because people are going to be grumpy if I don't ask you what were some of the things that helped, because that's quite a big evolution from that point to kind of where you got to. So what if you were to try to summarize some of the key lessons for you, what would they be?
Probably a number of them in different ways, but yeah, some of the key ones. I mean, first, as I've known, I think a lot of people in this situation, you're looking for kind of a magic diagnosis and solution. And once you get a diagnosis, which I did with the NHS, then thinking that's going to miraculously cure things. And actually, that was for me a bit of a false hope. When I first I was diagnosed and went to see a doctor, one of the first things they said to me was, you will probably never recover. This is probably what it's going to be like the rest of your life. And that was pretty devastating and upsetting to hear that. So I think after getting some hope, that being a knockback, and then learning really, if I want to recover, it's going to have to be myself leading a lot of this with people supporting me for various elements. Some of that being family and friends, some of that just being my own research. Some of that was definitely the Optimum Health Clinic as well, but making my own recovery in some ways with the support of others.
Yeah, we talk about it being like captain of the ship of your own recovery, and it sounds like you absolutely became that. In terms of any particular, were there particular moments of significant breakthrough, or was it a kind of gradual trend of things just over time kind of improving?
There was a gradual trend, but there were some things that really leapt things forward more dramatically. So definitely coming to the Optimum Health Clinic. I mean, I know it sounds a little bit like an advertisement, but it's absolutely true for me that it was a significant bit of the puzzle. And finding out things around my adrenal glands and getting on medications for that. Finding out things around my diet and shifting my diet to give me the right things that gave me energy at a stable level during the day. When I started the Optimum Health Clinic, I think it was around January 2011, I remember being March, April time, then I'd stopped using the wheelchair that I was kind of using to get out. So I wasn't fully recovered and I was no way like 100% health. And I don't want to give people false hope that there's a magical cure, but on a quick progress in a number of months, it was quite impressive and noticeable by everyone around me as well.
And were there times along that kind of healing path that you thought you'd never get to the point that you could do something as physical as go trekking for 20 days?
Yeah, for quite a few years, I think, considering how long it took me to recover. When I remember that I couldn't get out of bed, and some days I walked a couple of steps and collapsed. So from that to think I'd ever do anything like doing a 20-day trek at high altitude, carrying my stuff, I thought felt impossible, particularly when the doctors tell you that's pretty much the case as well. I was determined to recover and find a way though, but even then I think in my hopes of getting to that kind of health, I wasn't sure if that would be possible. I knew I wanted in time to get better, but that seemed quite a high goal, I have to say, back then.
Yeah, I think often what can happen is people can think, well, I could probably get to the point of not feeling this horrific and kind of getting through the day, but will I get to the point that I can truly do the things that I love and the things that I want to do without this kind of constant fear and anxiety and reality that something ends up crashing as a result of that?
Yeah, definitely.
What would you say if you kind of imagine from your kind of some of the kind of peak moments of that trek? What would you have said to that you that was in the wheelchair, or that you that was thinking it was never going to be possible to get through it, or others that are watching this that perhaps are in that situation? What if someone thinks it's not possible to recover, or they've tried everything, or they don't have what it takes, what would you say from that place?
There's definitely a few things where I think my recovery was hindered, and I recognise some of the things around the kind of the achiever and the helper pattern. Being kinder to yourself, and if I'd been kinder to myself at the start and not pushed myself as much, to not allowed myself to give myself enough rest, for example. And I think that was partly probably hindered by some of the advice I got from medical professionals as well, of we don't think there's anything wrong with you, keep pushing through. Kind of, they put me to CBT, and that was very much of, it's in your head, you need to physically push yourself to do more each day. And actually now I look back, and that was making me much worse. What I actually probably need to do at that point was be nicer to myself and say, allow yourself to rest. So I think that, and understanding your body and listening to your body, I definitely was in a place where I wasn't doing that as much, and I've now got a lot more receptive. Even during the trek, and so there were days I was like, I'm pushing myself, time to finish early today, have a rest. Other days I was like, my body feels fine, I can keep going. But I've learned to become a lot more receptive to what my body's telling me than I ever was at the start of this journey.
And I think, often it's like a pendulum where someone spent their whole life pushing themselves and ignoring their body, and then they've then approached recovery in that way. And then they have to swing to the other extreme of super listening to every kind of communication. And I think it's often liberating for people to hear that that's a stage on the recovery path. It's not the end of the recovery path, in a sense. And that you were then experiencing that you were like, I can push today. Like, my body is a yes to me challenging it and pushing the edges. And I think it's hard to believe people sometimes that they can get to the point they can really have that level of confidence in their body's capacity to respond positively to that kind of push.
Yeah. And you get it wrong sometimes along the journey, don't you? Where you push too hard and you go a few steps back. But it's recognizing that, trying to think of how far you've come, and not to get too knocked back when you have those setback times, I found as well.
So what does the future hold? Are there more adventures that are planned?
Definitely. Just keep traveling. So we'll be thinking about the next one to keep pushing myself on that. Yeah.
Awesome. Andy, thank you so much. I really appreciate you just kind of sharing it. I think it's a pretty amazing story, from wheelchair to 20 days trekking in Nepal. But I think what you're saying is also important, that it wasn't like there was some miracle moment. There's not some magical cure. It's not, if someone picks up the phone tomorrow to Optimum Health Clinic, we can send them the magic pill we gave you, and it's like instantly cured. But it's like it sounds like you worked phenomenally hard in that process. So congratulations and well done for getting through that.
Thank you.
So I hope you found that helpful and inspirational. It's a pretty amazing story. As I mentioned at the start of this video, please do reach out to Jenny at theoptimumhealthclinic.com if you'd like to share something. It doesn't have to be as dramatic or as full a story as what happened for Andy. It might just be a moment of something that you see or you feel or you experience differently. And I'd love to ask you a bit about what happened, how that happened, and how things are different as a result of that. We're back to Mindful Monday tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a excerpt from an interview that I filmed, I think it was about 3 years ago in Berlin, with spiritual teacher Thomas Hübel. And Thomas is talking about transparent communication, the importance of authenticity and transparency for all of our development and collective growth. So I look forward to talking with you then.